Hello everyone, and welcome to This is America. Today's guest is former US Ambassador to Lebanon, David Hale. But first, here is the top US news for the week. Kazakhstan said Thursday it will join the Abraham Accords between Israel and mainly Muslim nations in a largely symbolic move aimed at boosting US President Donald Trump's push for Middle East peace. The Central Asian Republic has had diplomatic ties with Israel for decades, unlike the four Arab states that normalized relations with Israel under the original accords signed in Trump's first term. The U.S. Department of the Treasury announced new sanctions against several individuals accused of transferring tens of millions of dollars from Iran to Hezbollah in 2025 through Lebanese money exchange houses. According to the Treasury, these networks exploit Lebanon's largely cash-based and informal financial system to fund the Shia group's military and political activities. The sanctions specifically target Osama Jabir, Jafar Mohammed Asir, the son of the late Hezbollah financial chief Mohammed Asir, and Samir Qasbar, director of Hukul SAL Offshore, already designated by Washington. These men allegedly coordinated money transfers stemming from the sale of Iranian oil and other goods, as well as other covert commercial operations. President Donald Trump seeks to blame kamikaze Democrats for the longest U.S. government shutdown ever, as it surpasses the 35th day record set during his first term. "I just got back from Japan," the Republican president told a breakfast meeting at the White House. "I talked about the kamikaze pilots. I think these guys are kamikaze. They'll take down the country if they have to." Republicans and Democrats are in a disagreement in Congress over an extension of federal funding, but Democrats have balked, demanding that any federal funding plan also includes an extension of enhanced Obamacare subsidies, which are set to expire. The U.S. government says the scheduled capacity for flights is being cut by 10% from Friday at 40 busy parts of the country, as the government shutdown increases pressure on air traffic controllers. There is going to be a 10% reduction in capacity at 40 of our locations, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy tells a news conference. U.S. President Donald Trump will host Syrian leader Ahmed al-Shara for talks on November 10, as announced by the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt, who stated that the former jihadist has made good progress toward establishing peace in his war-torn country. And that's your U.S. recap of the week. What is happening between the United States and Venezuela? Tensions are rising between the United States and Venezuela as Washington escalates pressure on Caracas over alleged drug trafficking, regional security, and diplomatic breakdown. The U.S. has deployed a flotilla of warships and military assets near Venezuela's coast, officially to combat narcotics flows, but many analysts warn this looks increasingly like a show of force. Meanwhile, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro accuses the U.S. of seeking regime change under the cloak of anti-drug operations. Caracas has mobilized militia forces and called on the U.S. to back off. The U.S. Justice Department has indicted Maduro's government and designated the Cartel de los Soles a terrorist organization, alleging senior Venezuelan officials facilitate mass shipments of narcotics into the U.S. At the same time, Venezuela's economy remains in deep crisis, and ordinary people are caught in the crosswinds of geopolitics, while the U.S. considers oil, drug, and migration issues all in one bundle. Diplomatically, ties remain broken. The U.S. does not recognize Maduro's legitimacy, and there are few formal channels left for negotiation. So what happens next? If the U.S. sticks to military and financial pressure, Venezuela may see closer ties with Russia and China, deepening the global stake in this regional dispute. On the other hand, a negotiated settlement over drug flows, sanctions relief, and political reform could de-escalate the standoff. For now, the world is watching this high-stakes game in the Caribbean with real implications for regional security, oil markets, and human lives. It's with great pleasure that I welcome my guest, former Ambassador to Lebanon, David Hale. David Hale, thank you for being with us. Was U.S. envoy Morgan Ortagus' visit, among other diplomatic visits and efforts that took place this past week, a warning to Lebanese officials regarding the disarming of Hezbollah?
Yes, I think clearly that the U.S. administration, like others, are very sobered by the need to get back on track with the full implementation of the ceasefire on both the Israeli side and the commitments that were made on this side, specifically by Hezbollah to disarm. We know it's a tough challenge, but it's a huge opportunity for the Lebanese, and I don't think we want to lose momentum. And we have seen, of course, that since October 7, the Israelis are sort of adopting a new national security strategy that's much more proactive and preemptive. They're not going to sit and wait for threats to unfold. They're not going to wait for an attack to retaliate against. They're going to go actively against potential threats if the Lebanese army is not doing it for its own interests.
What will happen by the end of the year if the disarming of Hezbollah doesn't take place?
Well, it's going to be a serious sort of test as to whether the Lebanese authorities, who clearly have the desire to see progress and to see a complete disarming of Hezbollah happen, but do they have the capacity to do it? Because, of course, it's not just a military operation. It's something that really needs a political umbrella around it, in which the army knows that the communities, different communities of Lebanon, all of the leaders are in support of this move. It's very important that we continue this momentum. And so, deadlines are meant to just force actions. Without a deadline, things often don't happen. So I think the deadline should be taken extremely seriously. A lot needs to be done before then. If it's not 100%, my guess is that the Israelis and the Americans are not going to say, walk away from all of this. But you're going to see persistent, I think, concern and desire to be helpful and help the Lebanese authorities do what they've said they're going to do, and make sure the Iranians aren't able to exploit these gaps.
There have been escalating tensions in the past few days with Israel, which were feared to culminate into an open war. Is this scenario plausible in your opinion?
Well, we've already seen an escalation, so I don't like to use the word, full-blown war. I don't think either side wants to see a return to that, but I do think Hezbollah needs to be sobered up. They made commitments. They launched into a war of their own choice. They lost it in a devastating way, and now they're pretending that somehow they're going to regain the upper hand here. And for the Israelis, it's very important to reestablish deterrence and make sure that they never again face that kind of pressure. We have this agreement in place that enables both sides, they've agreed to it, to take the necessary steps to de-escalate. My focus really is what can we do, what will happen after? If both sides are satisfied by the ceasefire, what do we do then to maintain the momentum necessary to continue to make sure that peace is enduring?
Okay, so about peace. Do you think that what is aside from Hezbollah stopping or is constituting an obstacle to peace today with Israel?
Well, I think Hezbollah's entire purpose is to prevent any kind of stability or peace between Israel and Arab states in general, and certainly specifically Lebanon. Is operating on an Iranian agenda for this purpose. The Iranians, obviously, because of the turn of events over the last 2 years, are no longer in a position to really do that. But they're lying in wait. I mean, they want to reduce their exposure now so they're not further weakened, in the hopes that the United States and Israel will lose interest, move on to other things, and then they can start creepingly to reestablish the assets that they had in Lebanon and elsewhere before the war. And in fact, the Israelis are making that accusation that they are, as you've seen in the media, they're already seeing evidence of rearming of Hezbollah by Iran. I can't verify that myself, but that's what they're saying. So I think it's just terribly important for us to make sure that Hezbollah is not able to claim that somehow they're still needed, their arms are still needed. It's the sovereign state of Lebanon that should be the ones who are defending in an appropriate way that reflects the will of all Lebanese, not just one small group, of how to defend their country and best secure their citizens. And that's peace. That's
peace. But I want to go back to something you just said. It's true that there have been talks about Hezbollah rebuilding its arsenal and training new militants. How does Washington perceive this?
Well, again, I don't know. I'm not in the position to, I don't see intelligence reports or anything like that anymore. But I think the Morgan's trip and the statements that U.S. officials have made reflect the concern the Israelis have been voicing to us. If the Israelis see this, we take it seriously. We also need to counsel the Israelis about not overreacting, allowing the Lebanese to do the things that they are entitled to do and must do to help stabilize the situation. So I'm glad to see this level of engagement and persistence in our diplomatic effort. And of course, we have a military team and the mechanism that is designed to help defuse crises like this when they happen.
Would you say that parliamentary elections could take place if Hezbollah is still armed?
Yes, I mean, obviously it's not ideal. I would certainly hope that Hezbollah's substantial arms, anyway, are not available to them by the time of the elections next, May?
Yes.
But even if that's not the case, I think it's important for Lebanon to go through its democratic, procedures. We would hope everything would be done to ensure they're as free and fair as possible. And if Hezbollah goes to the polls, they should not be able to intimidate voters the way they used to in the past and intimidate candidates not to run. So again, that's why this process of disarmament is so important. But I think to actually cancel the elections would be a step backward and be a reflection of a lack of certainty and conviction in Lebanon that is, I don't think, accurate.
How would you evaluate the LAF's performance in disarming Hezbollah?
I think from what I've seen, and again, I don't have the freedom to travel around in the South and see things now that I'm a private citizen, but from what we've heard from the Lebanese ambassador in Washington and from your leadership here, is again, serious steps are being taken. The question, of course, is we don't know the full magnitude of Hezbollah's weaponry. So when numbers or percentages are used, it raises the question with me is like, well, how much of a dent is being actually made in the armory of Hezbollah? And it's important not just to disarm what's here, but to make sure there's no flow to replace what is quote unquote disarmed. The Litani is obviously first phase, south of the Litani, and I think the Lebanese are proud of the things they've done. It's still, it'll be a never-ending process, by the way. This is not something as if there's a date certain, you can declare it done. There always have to be aggressive actions, patrolling, using intelligence, using political influence to make sure that there isn't a regression in the disarming of, people don't like the word disarming, but it is, of course, disarming Hezbollah, but also the assertion of the monopoly of the state over arms. That's what we're talking about.
How can you ensure that this process is being implemented?
Well, the mechanism, the monitoring by the members of the mechanism are important. I think we're confident in the information that's provided to us by the Lebanese Armed Forces. We have deep, strong relations with many ranks of the Army, so I think we trust the information we get. They just, I think it's the political will, not the operational capability of the LAF that's at question and needs to be addressed here.
Would you say that the Lebanese people are ready to sign a peace deal with Israel?
Perhaps not yet, although I've seen an evolution this year of more willingness to debate it. I was here just in June, a few months ago, and I found very few people were interested in talking about a full-fledged peace treaty the way Egypt and Jordan have them. Instead, people were talking about the Armistice Agreement or 1701, which to me didn't really solve the problem, so I don't know why that's viewed as somehow the answer. Today, in just my initial discussions, I arrived here yesterday, I see the same people talking a little bit more flexibly about what might be needed and thinking about other more permanent and durable solutions to dealing with Israel. There's been so much emotion. It's still going on. People are still dying. There is still violence. Villages have not been rebuilt. I understand the psychological resistance, but as diplomats, we sometimes have to step back and look at the big picture. And the big picture is Iran is no longer dictating to the Lebanese authorities their future. And so it's in the hands of the Lebanese state. I know that's hard in a country that has to balance power among all these different factions, but this is an opportunity that you haven't had since before the Civil War began, so many years ago.
Would you say that Lebanon is next to join the Abraham Accords, or Syria will be next?
Well, who knows? But I think that one of the differences, and there are many, between Lebanon and Syria is, of course, that Syria has still a territorial dispute with Israel, the Golan Heights, which Israel's annexed. So the Israelis don't view it as up for change. And I would be surprised if someone whose nom de guerre was Mohammed al-Jilani who's going to just suddenly give up the Golan Heights. So there's a major obstacle there that needs to be worked out. Whereas in Lebanon, whatever territorial anomalies there are along the border can easily be resolved through a UN process of delimiting the border. So I think that, which historically has been a major stumbling block in Middle East peacemaking, is not really at issue here in Lebanon. It's more about security and the emotional and psychological gap, the leap that needs to be made. Are we really prepared to live in peace with our neighbor after all these years?
There are voices in Washington saying that the Lebanese leadership is being too lax in disarming militias. Do you agree with this statement?
No, I have confidence in the Lebanese leadership. I believe that they're doing what they can. I also trust their judgment about the pace of this, in that because, again, it's a political problem. While Hezbollah is no longer going to be the power broker it used to be over Lebanon, no longer holding the sword over all Lebanese decision-making, that doesn't mean and should not be seen to mean that the Shia community itself no longer has its fair share in the power equation in Lebanon. So that is something only Lebanese can resolve, how to do that, how to convince enough of the people at stake here that their future is guaranteed by the state, not by some Iranian-backed militia. So that is a political and, again, sort of a process that has to go on in parallel with the disarming effort, and the two can be mutually supportive. But the United States really doesn't have a role, obviously, to play in your domestic politics. Our goal is to make sure that the ceasefire is implemented, and everyone's agreed that we have a recognized role in doing that.
Is Hezbollah over?
They don't seem to know it yet, but they're nothing like what they used to be. Yeah. And I would never say a movement like that is gone forever. I think what will be important is that they no longer have this ability to intimidate and dominate and exclude other voices, other ways of resolving Lebanon's difficulties. And so that's going to take a little bit of time. After, again, all the assassination campaigns and so forth, for opposition or at least alternative voices in the Shia community to speak out. But if I know Lebanese well enough after my time here, there are definitely voices that want to be heard, and we'll see, and we need to help encourage that.
Thank you so much, David Hale, for this interview.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Up next, a report by Colleen Antoun.
Democrat Zohran Mamdani has been declared the mayor-elect of New York City, securing a decisive win with over 97% of the votes counted. The election held on Tuesday, November 4th, saw a high turnout, with 1.75 million voters participating. As the first major vote since President Trump's return to office, it became a flashpoint for national political tensions. New York remains a deep blue stronghold, but Mamdani's victory over former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who ran as an independent, and Republican Curtis Sliwa, signals a shift within the Democratic Party toward its far left wing. Mamdani's campaign leaned heavily on progressive themes like rent control, expanded public housing, and taxpayer-funded childcare. Policy's critics say that it could strain the city's budget and deepen its economic challenges.
This other guy is not qualified. Most of the people that voted for him are not even model citizens, So right now, our city, our beloved city, is in the hands of a person that doesn't have experience of any kind of job, any kind of managerial position. So I feel very scared.
The race was marked by sharp ideological clashes. President Trump called Mamdani a communist lunatic and warned that federal funding could be at risk under his leadership.
Our approvals are somewhat subject to who wins the election, because if a socialist, or in the case of New York City, a communist wins, you feel a lot differently about making an investment. If somebody that had no chance, in other words, if somebody wins and has no chance of ever having a great economy because of that philosophy, you would put a halt to what we're doing.
This brave new course.
Mamdani responded by accusing the administration of voter intimidation, rhetoric that only fueled partisan divides.
It fears not the appeasement it craves.
This wasn't just a local contest. Voters chose a candidate who promises sweeping change, but questions remain about how his policies will affect crime, business, and the city's relationship with Washington.
Are we ready to fight for someone we don't know?
Mamdani's win may be a notable political shift, but it raises serious concerns about the future of New York's fiscal health, public safety, and its role as a national economic engine.
That's it for today's episode. The replay is available on all This is Beirut's platforms. Thank you all for watching and see you next week.